Hi, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life with Dr. T. I'm Dr. T, and this is the place where emotionally sensitive people get the emotional tools that they need to succeed. With us today is a guest that I have been so looking forward to talking to. We've been connected for a while, but not gotten to have this kind of conversation today. So I'm really excited to introduce him to you. And I'm going to go through and read his bio, and then we're going to dive right in. Okay. Dr. Russell Kennedy is very rare among physicians in that he specializes in the very disorder he suffers from himself. Dr. Kennedy has degrees in advanced training in medicine, neuroscience, and developmental psychology. What a combination. He knows more about the understanding, treatment, and healing of anxiety from more perspectives than anyone else in the world. It is not all science, though, as he also is a certified yoga and meditation teacher and was a professional stand-up comedian for over a decade. While under a therapeutic dose of LSD, he discovered how he could heal himself from anxiety, and now he shares those insights with others who struggle with chronic emotional pain. And Dr. Kennedy's upcoming book, The Anxiety RX, will be released in September of 2020. So Dr. Russ, welcome to the show. It is great to have you with us.
It's really great to be here, Tracy. It's really nice to talk to a kindred spirit like you.
I know, this is so wonderful. So I know that so many people watching this show have suffered with anxiety like all of their life, and people that we talk to all the time, tell us that they recognize that they've been really anxious since they were really young. And this has been a really long-term, very difficult journey for so many people. And so I know that everybody's going to be really excited to understand your perspective on what's going on with anxiety and how things can really be different, so that people can be living the life that they're really meant to be living and not have all of this anxiety really being a barrier to their success. So with that said, Russ, let's start by having you share with us a bit about the journey that brought you to be this, incredible, really, as you said, your perspectives on anxiety are the top in the world. So how did you go, how did you go from really suffering with this to really being such an expert that helps people with this?
Well, I think the people that have the condition are the ones that understand it the most. So I grew up in a family where my mother was a registered nurse and she worked a lot. My father was schizophrenic and he didn't work that much. So he got sicker and sicker and sicker throughout my life, and eventually committed suicide when I was 26 and he was 52. And I grew up in this environment that was really chaotic. I didn't know. So I got to be really good at reading him, really good at reading other people, where their mental, physical stuff lies. I've always been an intuitive. I've always been really sensitive. As you start, some of us are born sensitive, and if you're born sensitive in the world we live in today, if you don't have anxiety, it's pretty much a miracle. So much of it depends on, your level of attachment as a child. And my mother was great, but she wasn't around as much as I would like because she was the sole breadwinner. And it was one of those things where I grew up in this family, and I remember watching them take my dad away in an ambulance to the mental hospital for, the umpteenth time, and just thinking, one day, I'm this 12, 13-year-old kid looking out this window going, one day I'm going to make this mean something. One day I'm going to make all this pain that he's going through and what the rest of the family is going through, it's going to mean something. So became a physician, burned out of that because one of my issues is that I can see into people. And if I see, someone who's been, physically abused or mentally abused or sexually abused, I see it in them. As they talk to me or whatever, I see it in them. And in a 7 to 10 minute office consult, I can't even touch that. I can't even open it up. So I got so frustrated with not being able to to deal with people and deal with their traumas on a level that I could have a chance at fixing them. And I was forced to kind of write prescriptions. And that really kind of, I think psych drugs, I think, are life-saving in a lot of cases, but I think they're overused. I think medical doctors in general aren't trained in mental health very well. And, our knee-jerk reaction is to write a prescription because we want to help. Like, doctors want to help. That's why we get it. But unfortunately, what we do is we wind up numbing the pain, and the pain is a messenger for you to kind of look at the pain and be able to kind of integrate it. You and I have talked about this a little bit before, but being able to integrate the pain so it doesn't trigger our bodies in such a monumental manner that we can actually see the forest for the trees. So that's a long answer for you, Tracy.
That is so.
Yeah, but that's basically, I do it because, I don't want anyone to have to suffer like I did and I wish I had this information on anxiety, 30 years ago, because it would have changed the course of my life, just knowing what I know now.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Russ, because what an incredible atmosphere for your development as a human being. Right. And so coming into this world with this gift of sensitivity, which I really believe, the ability to really feel what's going on, even if when we're young, we don't know exactly what to do with all of that. Oh, yeah. Right. And you're kind of like thinking that, wait, everybody's like this. And to have that sensitivity, and then it makes sense, right, that your dad with schizophrenia, this is an ultimate sensitivity where the triggering whatever the person's sensing is creating all kinds of reactive patterns. And some of those are just delusions and hallucinations, depending on the type, obviously.
Yep.
And so you're developing in this experience where you're sensitive to reactivity, but then there's all this reactivity, and this is such a framework for your life. You're essentially you're learning, right? Your job on the job here. And I really resonate with this moment that you said where this time frame where you said, I'm going to make this mean something. That's really something, because I've been there where I've said to myself, I'm going to make sure I'm 12 and I'm like, nobody's going to suffer from these difficulties the way my family has.
Yep.
And that's such a big, important purpose. So from that point of saying, I want to make this mean something, and then you ended up going into medicine, do you have a sense that like you ended up, just knowing that you wanted to help and help people heal, and then that kind of took you down that path until you were kind of figuring out what the real version of it was?
Yeah, the thing about medicine for me is I've kind of always known it was my path. Like I think I'm kind of like a natural healer at heart, but I also knew that I had to get my MD so that I could talk to other MDs and express to them what I've seen on the other side, with, living in India, a temple in India, taking psychedelics, ayahuasca, LSD, psilocybin, not to get high, but just to examine this anxious mind of mine. And then with my background in neuroscience, I can tell, what's going on in my nucleus accumbens, what's going on in the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis. I could talk about all that stuff, but really what I wanted to do is make it practical for people. And, what I really found was that anxiety is more about the body than it is about the mind, So what I saw on LSD was this, it's kind of this purple, sharp, crystalline, coarse pressure that's in my solar plexus. And I was told, and I don't know where this came from, and I wasn't in the midst of the LSD where everything was all screwy. I was coming out of it because I couldn't think anything when I was on LSD. So I was just coming out of it, and I was shown that this is where your anxiety lies. And I was shown a little bit of like flashbacks from my childhood and that kind of thing, because my dad, before I was 10, was actually a wonderful dad. Like, he would take me fishing. He taught me how to play chess, throw me how to play baseball, throw me how to hit a baseball, all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I just lost him, So it was this feeling like I've got to change this somehow, and I've got to find where this is. And so often what we do in psychiatry, particularly, I'm not a psychiatrist, but in psychiatry and often in psychology, is we do talk therapy. And we assume that you can fix a feeling problem with a thinking solution. And it helps, absolutely. It helps, it gives people frameworks, but you're not really dealing with the underlying cause. And the little thing that I say, you know, if you've got a fire on First Street and you send all the fire trucks to Second Street, you're really not going to, you know, if you're going to do all this stuff with the mind, and the problem is really stored in your body and you can't get at that with your mind, you're just going to be chasing your tail. And so many of my patients have been in therapy for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they feel better because they make a connection with a therapist, but they're not really getting at the underlying problem. So you can fix the thoughts, you know, to some extent, but the source of the problem, which is still in your body, which is this old unresolved trauma that gets stored inside your body, because when you're a child, you have no place to store it. So you store it in your unconscious. You know, Freud said the unconscious mind is a representation of the body. So that goes into your body. And it sits there, and then it reacts, and then it basically forms your behaviors for the rest of your life until you become aware of it, bring it out, and then, as we were talking about earlier on, integrating it into a framework that you can kind of understand it. I'm going to go on a little bit longer and just say, you know, if you would have asked me 5 years ago about my father, I would say, well, my father was crazy. You know, he thought he was Henry Kissinger once. You know, he was nuts. You know, I think he probably had a couple of rounds being Jesus as well. You know, he was crazy. And he scared me, not because he was ever abusive or violent, but because I would just, this man that was my guardian for so long, all of a sudden just disappeared. The dogs are out there running around. So
hi guys.
Yeah. So I look at this man who is supposed to be my protector, and now is causing me so much pain. And I had to figure out where that came from and be able to unearth it, bring it up into the light, and then start healing it and integrating it so that I can now look at my father and tell a story. You know, my father was really mentally ill. Like I knew he loved me. Like I knew he took care of me, and I felt his presence there. But, you know, his illness really, it was his illness that took him away from me, not his own spirit. So that's kind of how I, you know, and just the difference in stories, you know, shows that I've kind of integrated a lot more of this trauma. So again, a long answer, and I'm used to.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it, Russ. There's so many amazing pieces I want to just grab the thread of. One of them is, I think this is so incredible, and I really relate to this, that, you know, this concept of like, this is the amazing part about being sensitive, is that there is all of this intuition operating. And so knowing somewhere within you that becoming a physician and being able to connect with other physicians, because we both know that they're getting all of these mental health difficulties in their offices.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're, you know, I've heard this for years too. They're, you know, as the person's talking about whatever ache and pain or whatever, they are walking through their framework of like, take a pill or do this, or it's not that. And I'm just trying to like, I am imagining you being there as a physician and getting this sense of something more deeply emotional going on, but the system that you're in, emotional, physical, of the just such deeper realm than the superficial symptom. And that's really something that you're going like, so that is what took you to the next level of what you were doing. But I really related to this in that I could have, like, years before I got my PhD in psychology, just jumped in this arena. As I was working with people, I was a corporate trainer, so I was changing the way that people operate and things. But something told me, like, go through this process, not only for the self-discovery of it, but because it's going to allow you to actually collaborate in the field and serve people at a higher level, like over the long term.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, and yet it, you know, I get it. This is your unique being and all that it's there to do and offer to people. And, you know, it's all the degrees and everything like that, but it really is, I can feel it's really you and what is wanting to express itself all the time in order to serve people in such a purposeful way.
Yeah. And that's really why I wrote the book too. You know, did you ever read the book, Eat, Pray, Love, Tracy?
Of course. Yes.
So
Yeah.
now I'm a guy, and I'm kind of a guy's guy too. You know, I work out. I don't cry. That's actually that's not true. I actually cry quite a bit because I know it's helpful. But basically, I read that book and I thought this is such a great framework for a book. The 108 chapters, because 108 has some spiritual significance, visible by 54, by 36, by 27, all that kind of stuff. So I saw the way that she did it, spread it out into 36 smaller 36 chapter sections. So I did the same thing. So the first 36 chapters of my book are how we attribute anxiety to the mind, and how that's valid on some level. The next 36 chapters are how I explain that anxiety is really a sense of alarm that's locked in your body and only reflected by your mind. So it's the alarm. So even when people say, and I always correct people when I see them, as my patients or clients or whatever, they say, I'm feeling really anxious today. It's like, I really want you to use the term alarm. So if you say, I'm really feeling alarmed today, then you're actually conveying something to me. Anxiety as a word doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to it. So when you're talking to your friend who's never had anxiety, they don't know what it is, and you say, I'm feeling a lot of my anxiety today, they won't know. But if you say, hey, Shirley, today, meeting you for lunch, it's like, I'm really feeling a lot of alarm today. She will know what alarm, because we've all been alarmed, right? And we all know what that feeling. So, and the last 36 chapters are basically how we join the mind and the body back together, because I do believe that anxiety results when we live up in our heads, we live from the neck up, we get into this habit of thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And the reason why we do that is to avoid going back into that trauma, that old trauma that was buried in our body. So we only have one place to go. But then once we hit, 25, 35, 45, that stops working. That going up in your head stops working. So now you're forced with your body, and your body's going to show you, like in different illnesses or whatever, you're forced now to deal with your body. So you might as well go in there willingly as opposed to kicking and screaming. So it's learning how to really integrate and find this place in your body that holds this pain. And you're not a child anymore. A lot of us, when we get really upset, we regress back to our traumas when we're 4, 7, 12, 13 years old. And that's the level of ability that we're dealing with. So if you fight,
you're like literally there trying to deal with an issue as an emotional child in that moment. Yeah.
Well, it's no wonder. It's no wonder couples, who both have like abandonment issues or whatever, if one of them starts to abandon, the other pulls back out of defensive detachment, and then the whole thing just spirals, because neither of them know why they're pulling away from the other partner. They know they're doing it to keep themselves safe, at least unconsciously, but they're creating more of the underlying problem. On top of that, they're both 12 years old. So if you look at two 12-year-olds trying to solve a problem of abandonment when they've both been abandoned, it's a horror show. Like it just doesn't happen. So you need different tools to be able to bring you into your body first. And that's why I say there's no point in trying to think your way out of a feeling problem. You've got to bring yourself back into your body, ground yourself first. And I get a lot from your stuff, like intention, make that intention, before you have that next fight with your partner, before you get up and you're going to be really anxious, make that intention, tell your brain that I'm going to get up, I'm going to get a shower, I'm going to get to the gym, make that intention, because if you don't, your old unconscious programming will just rule your life.
Yeah, you'll be in a reactive state. And the moment you start going into an intentional state, your body chemistry literally starts to change.
Yep.
All the cascade of better, the neurohormones and neurotransmitters, the moment you start to get some sense of purpose, even if it is like, I'm going to go make a sandwich.
Yep.
You just start shifting from that cycling. Russ, something that you said just a little bit ago, I want to make sure everybody gets this again. This is really, really key for everybody to understand. You were saying, and I want to understand it. I want to know I want to get the Russ imprint here. Okay. You said that it's a body issue that is manifesting in the mind. Can you say that again just so everybody gets this very important perspective?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll tell you a quick story about how they treat PTSD and combat veterans these days. So what they do is they're doing something called the stellate ganglion block. The stellate ganglion is in the neck. It's around C5. and it transmits a lot of sympathetic nervous system activity from the body up into the brain. Right? So when you've been in a war zone, your body is always prepared for death. It's always prepared for danger, right? So now they get home and their mind knows that they're safe, but their body still doesn't, right? So what we do is when we paralyze the sympathetic ganglion there, I shoot in a bunch of local anesthetic in there. These men and women, within 30 seconds, 60 seconds, feel like new people. Like they're just like, and then they go home to their families and their families say, he's coming down for dinner. He's laughing. He's telling jokes. He stopped drinking. Like, what did you do to him? Right. And even though the block only lasts, if you use Marcaine, 14 hours, but if you use bupivacaine or one of the shorter ones, 4 to 6 hours. But for some reason, it's kind of like that break in the ice. Like they actually see the world the way it actually is rather than this. So that's one of the reasons why I think what happens to us as children, I think, just say, for example, this is a little example that I use. Say as a child, your brain, your system can hold a cup of trauma, like a cup, a measuring cup, right? Mm-hmm. Now, say your parents get divorced, say a parent dies, say a parent severely ill. That's pouring 2 cups into a system that can only hold 1. So where does the excess go? It goes into the body and it gets sequestered there because we don't want to have to deal with that anymore. So, but it still has that action, just like those combat veterans. It's always in the background. There may be points in your life where you're low stress and it's fine, but as soon as you get into a stressful environment, that area in your body lights up again. And then your mind, which is a compulsive meaning-making machine,
yes.
sense meaning. So it makes sense of how your body feels. So if your body has this alarm stored in it, your mind goes, okay, this feels really alarming. What do we have in our lives to be alarmed about? Exactly. Well, I've got a tax bill. I got my daughter sick. I might be getting divorced. I hate my job. So that gets magnified, so we start looking at the things because our body is inflamed in this way. Our mind has to make sense of that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense by making up a story that's perfectly congruent or consistent with that pain. So when you have a lot of alarm in your system, you're not going to go, hey, I'd love to go to a picnic today. You're going to be like, I wonder if I'm going to have a job in 2 weeks. I wonder if my mom's going to survive her breast cancer. I wonder, that's what's going to come up. So it's really important to see that if you can calm your body, and not in a yoga, I know I'm a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, not in a yoga, settle in, find your happy place. It's not that. It goes beyond that. And it's a practice, and in the book, I talk about the ABCs of how to do this is just be aware of your triggers. For me, I'm a huge hypochondriac. So I know when I start wondering, if I've got some sort of, I used to do this joke on stage as a comedian. It's like, I've had every test because I get paranoid about, if I have a cough for a couple of weeks, I get a chest x-ray, maybe a CT scan. If I have a headache, I have, I get an MRI or a CT in my head. I had a pap smear a couple of days ago.
He'll be here all week, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Try the veal. Hey, what a crowd, what a crowd. I want to tell you. I went to my doctor. He told me I had 2 weeks to live. I said, I want a second opinion. He says, okay, you're ugly too.
Knock, knock. Okay.
So yeah. So then you get the comedian. See, this is my mind. So you get the science guy, and then you get the comedian, and they fight with each other, like writing this book.
But they're all an integrated part of kicking this anxiety thing into where everything is supposed to be.
So I don't know what your original question was.
Oh, that's okay. I do, because everybody understands. This is so good for everybody to understand it. Yeah. Right? That especially as I really recognize, like, emotional sensitivity this is a full body experience. We're not just because we feel it, we identify more with, like, I feel anxiety in my head. The whole body is sensory. It's having a whole experience. And so everything that's going on, where traumatic, overwhelming, it's the body's experiencing it, not just because your cognitive, process is going on. So when I think of this, Russ, it's, my recent experience, it feels like it's more, my dad died on August 2nd. He passed away, and I cannot believe it's been a year.
Yeah.
And long, chaotic, weird bizarre story short, where my dad's wife simply will not talk to me, wouldn't give me, like, dad died, couldn't
Right.
have access to anything. So,
Right.
so there was not only the death, through a very, very challenging mental illness that manifested as physical illness, but
Yep.
never got treated properly, even though I was here to talk. When I'd been doing this emotional training and leadership and psychological work and really holistically helping people, deal with everything that's really getting in their way and live, their highest quality life. But this, you talk about that cup, I felt like I'd prepared my whole life, and everything that I'd done was like, oh my God, this is so big. It's because it's not even just his death. It's like, I can't even have like a sock he once wore, no transitional objects. And it was the most abrupt thing. And the conditioning around, you're supposed to give a eulogy, you're supposed to go to a funeral. So like, I thought I knew what trauma was.
Right.
And my lungs, within about 6 weeks, my lungs seized up pretty much. Like, I'm like, fortunately I could walk myself through and, being in the body and helping myself work through what was going on. But it was never more clear to me. Like, I already knew it, but it was like, literally, I get it. Like, my lungs, if I allowed this to just keep pathologizing, my lungs literally stop.
Yeah. And do you have like an underlying like asthma kind of tendency and that kind of stuff?
I didn't. However, I did for a short time, do an inhaler, knowing it was very symptomatic of this grief. Unfortunately, I'm one of these people, and this is, again, what we're inviting everybody to do, is when there is something calling you to be with it, support it, serve it, be there for yourself, and move through it in a very strategic way. It's so important, because your physical body is, to the point, even if you're ignoring it and disconnected from your physical body, it's not ignoring you. It's got stuff going on, which will then create so many other things.
Yeah. So what I see can I tell you what I see?
Yeah, please.
So, so that's, you won't hear too many medical doctors talk about chakras, but it is one of my, things.
Yeah, please.
So you've got a blue blockage in your throat, which is basically, you're not able to say something to someone who's kind of close to you, but not. So who is that person?
It was him, because what happened before I went to say, I wanted to say goodbye to my dad and have a moment. And, through the dad's curriculum, my dad was a very, very successful person on all the levels that people think they need to be successful. But he had kind of a mental breakdown, which he would never have called it that. And he ended up ignoring what the body was asking him to do. He didn't know. And he went into this cult situation. And they did a lot of programming, and he slowly but surely, his body broke down to where he could not walk. He had 17 diagnoses, including Parkinson's, and going around telling everybody that the world is going to end, basically like ended his life in short order. And when I went to say goodbye to him, his wife would not allow that to happen.
Yeah, that was the image that I got. It's his wife that you can't say something to.
Yeah,
so that's the image I get it from your dad too, but that is something that I get really strongly, is that it's his wife that is blocking you, and that's where a lot of this blockage is manifesting.
Right, and it makes perfect sense, Russ, and I really appreciate that reading, because because it has been a very bizarre sort of, I don't have a template for this, where you're somebody's child and another human being is essentially kind of, going through whatever her programming is at this time.
Yeah.
And so what I've been working with is all of the shock of it, and just wanting to just say, please give me this is my dad. Can I please have something of his? And because she won't allow me to, she she will not allow me to interact with her.
Okay, there you go.
It has been like just the strangest thing, because she loved my dad, and I can't imagine why she would not care about his daughter's well-being. But she's going through something big. I understand that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I
But
get
when I
that.
tell you the physical, the curriculum of this last year, and it's been a tremendously traumatic, but it's also been one of the biggest training periods of my life, to understand the physical body, and how I kept saying, Tracy, there is, even if you wanted to, it's not your style, but you cannot run from this. You must go through it, into it, get every part of it, study it, understand it. And why I like this also, Russ, is that if you're in the adult self, this is what I've discovered.
Yeah,
If you're in the adult self, you can actually usher, because a lot of those feelings are the child's feelings.
absolutely.
They were the kid's feelings. So the
Yeah,
adult self is like, I'm good. I know, I'm moving forward. To usher the child's rage through as the emotional adult that's there for them. And I just got to do that on so many levels. And I'm not in the thick of it anymore, but I'm in the, like, I'm not in the treacherous waters. I'm in
the
the
aftermath.
easier waters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So I just really appreciate that. And this is why it's for everybody to really be able to tune into Dr. Russ and what he can help you with.
So we'll just carry on with this for a second.
Yeah.
How did you lose your dad when you were 6 years old?
My parents divorced and he left the house.
How old were you?
I was 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I get, 6 years old, lost dad, that kind of stuff. So I know this is weird for medical doctors. Like I really, really get it. That, I was given this gift of being able to see things and that kind of thing. So I would, and let's get back a little bit to, this. Have you heard of the adverse childhood events study? Okay.
Yeah.
So 17,000 people, Pacific Northwest, they found out that probably 50% of them had some significant emotional, physical, sexual trauma as children, which led to illnesses when they, earlier than they should be, sort of arthritis starting in their 40s instead of their 60s and that kind of stuff, all this kind of energetic stuff, So it's really important to really address that part of your body. So, probably what I would do with you just for a second is, can you close your eyes and can you connect with that 6-year-old who's, how did you find out your parents were divorcing?
I don't remember, but it's so great that you say this, Russ, about that point, because maybe when you and I started setting up this interview, I started to have the download of, and I was telling my mom, I was like, I believe I'm just actually now processing your guys' divorce.
Yeah.
And I, like, this all set that up. And I went, and because I now understand grief that is more eventful than chronic, I recognize, and I really believe this, that even though the research and statistics say how kids are resilient through divorce, I just recognize that I knew it, but I now know it's a death, right? When your parent is not there all the time and you're not developed with them. And so just understanding the level of grief that I didn't want my dad to ever be out of our house, and nobody does. And so why it's so important to figure these things out to heal ourselves so that we can be there with the people that we're meant to be with and we're meant to develop with, and all of that. Because I get it. My 6-year-old, I don't remember, Russ, and all I know is every day that I wasn't with my dad was a bad day.
Okay. So what I would get you to do is close your eyes for a second. We won't do this for very long, but close your eyes for a second. See if you can go back to that point where your dad was leaving, and see if you can find a place in your body that kind of lights up, that kind of feels different than other places. And it's really uncomfortable. Okay.
It's here.
Okay. So right in the center of your chest there.
It's here, but it also, I was actually feeling this last night. I was feeling into this last night.
Yeah.
It's also over to this side of my body. And and it's, Yeah, it has a lot of activity, a lot of stimulus.
Does it have a color? It may not.
I don't feel a color. It feels very
Pulsatile?
energized, very,
Okay.
very stimulated, and it connects me to the meaning of heartbreak, like, and recognizing that that heartbreak is not just around my dad just passing.
Yeah. No, it'll come out with any future heartbreak after that. Does it
Yeah.
have a defined border or is it more diffuse?
It's like actually right here.
Okay.
It's like straight up here and then goes
Yeah.
over to the other side.
So it's kind of like a band. Is it like a band around your chest?
Ah, it has a quality of, yeah, something's pinching over here.
Okay.
Something's pinched, so maybe that is a band.
Maybe. I don't
Something.
want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's why I considered it. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
consider it. And but if I were like, if there was a sea creature, that was
Okay.
kind of doing that.
It's okay.
And then I can tell you that when my dog Lola passed away recently, that started to light up even more. And I knew it was like grief on top of grief. Uh,
Right.
but it was really this lighting up feeling. And again,
Yeah.
I'm going, wow, this has been a long string of grief that kind of really ended in what I think could be like the worst outcome possible.
So
Uh,
far, yeah.
yeah, so far, thank
Yeah.
you, so far,
Yeah. So,
so
but the
far.
message that I get for you, Tracy, is because of the work that you do and that kind of stuff, is being able to help other people at a brand new level. I see your voice actually coming back and you moving, up even higher and higher in the world that you're in now. So I think, I this sounds trite, but it's like it's a good thing. No, I don't mean it that
Oh,
way.
just say it, just
But
say it. God,
I
just say
just, yeah, I just mean that it's part of your ascendance.
Oh my gosh, Russ, I love, and this is what I want everybody to really know. What is so great about facing what it is that's painful, it's so empowering, even though it does really, I really feel the importance of this adult self that is in the present moment, recognizing you really are, my sense of it, like ushering your child self through the development that didn't happen or happened, under stress. And the
Yeah.
gift in all of this that is there for all of us is, I didn't know before this, I didn't know in a full being way that what rage really was, I thought I knew. I
Yeah.
had been doing this work with people for a long time, very effectively, and I got to explore it from a place of not having it take me out, but I got to literally explore it, look at it, totally drug free, by the way, which
Yeah.
was amazing to me.
Yeah.
But this is what was phenomenal, is if I wasn't having to be the anger, but I could be dealing with it, and
Yeah.
and that just made all the difference. And I thought, I now know why people murder people. I feel like I know something really important now,
Yeah.
because I could explore those thoughts and those feelings and not have to go do it.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I write in my book, I mean, I'm talking to my editor yesterday, and she said, that you use this phrase a lot. It's like when you can see it, you don't have to be it,
Oh,
because it takes you over. And that part of you, that feels, like that's pulsatile and that sort of stuff, that's your 6-year-old. That's your,
I
so when you get stressed and when you start thinking about this conflict with your, I guess, stepmother, is that the
I
idea?
never call her that. Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad's wife.
Yeah. It felt weird
Because
when
they
I
got
said,
married when I was, in my 30s. So she was,
yeah.
we never were a family. Yeah.
So what I would do is find that area with your hand and put your hand over it, because that's your 6-year-old.
So I love this, because this is what I end up doing naturally. I
Yeah.
end up really holding and soothing and supporting that, and
Yeah.
supporting her through grief
Yeah.
and all of those things. And Russ, just for everybody, this is so helpful. Thank you. Just for everybody to get a sense, is there any way that when you see what you see and know what you know, how does that work? How do you experience that?
How do I feel it? I'll just get, and I can't explain it to this day. Like how I saw that you were 6 years old when when you lost your dad. I didn't see that your parents split up, but I thought you lost your dad.
I did lose him.
Um, I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's a color. Sometimes it's just this, I think it gets told to me in a little bit of a story in a way. And then I've learned how to interpret it in such a way but I usually have to be in the presence of the person while they're talking. So I feel their resonance and their energy and that kind of stuff. And then I just get, it's not a vision either. It's not like something I can kind of see, although sometimes I can see your child, in a pink dress and with the lace around a thing, like a favorite dress and that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'll see stuff like that. I don't know exactly how it comes to me,
Got it. Yeah,
So
and
it is one
the
of those
fact
things.
is that it just does.
But yeah, and I do that with people. Like I find where their trauma is, and then when I find where their trauma is, I find where they can localize it. And then when you can do those two things, when you know that that's your 6-year-old, and then when you get into grief, a lot of times what happens to us when we go into grief is we have the wherewithal of that particular age group. So you're a 6-year-old trying to solve, your current adult life situation. So it is one of those things. That's why I say that thinking is useless in this particular phase, because it's more important to feel and just really put your hand and feel the hand of support on your chest and feel like, I'm here with you, even though those are words, like just that sense that I feel it. So I would encourage anybody who's watching is like, think of your trauma. Don't pick your number one trauma. Like don't pick in your life, right? But pick a trauma in your life, say a medium trauma, if there is such a thing. And then just sort of sit with that quietly and just sort of see where in your body that kind of lights up. Usually it's in the midline, almost always it's, somewhere between your chin and your pelvis, and just see where it is, because that's more than likely, that's your child expressing that grief, anger, rage, pain, whatever. And then if you can connect with them, and this is something you can't do verbally, I mean, I can instruct people.
It's energetic. Yeah.
And I do instruct people on how to do it. So there is sort of a manual a little bit, but when you're in it, it's really important to get the feeling of it rather than trying to talk yourself in. Oh, this is my inner child. Just see where it takes you, because so often we live in this neck up society, and we try and overanalyze everything, when really the only way we're going to integrate this is to actually feel it. Because, I can tell you that, you carry a lot of grief from your parents separating. I can feel it in you, right? But that's not going to help you heal it from a literary sort of verbal point of view. You've got to feel it to heal it, which is what Dan Siegel talks about, being able to feel it to heal it. And you can label it too. So I think it is one of those things that we all carry these traumas. I think getting back full circle, one of the reasons why I was a medical doctor is because if I had said this, if I was, say a naturopath or a chiropractor, I mean, I have nothing against those people. I've been to both of them and they've done wonderful stuff for me personally, health-wise. But to have that MD and have that credibility, because I am going to talk about how anxiety and a lot of our emotional pain is stored in our body. And this is starting to come out. We're starting to see this a lot more with psychedelic use and that kind of thing. And then so if we're just treating it with talk therapy all the time, we're not actually getting anywhere. And in fact, we can re-traumatize people by making them go over this in their mind.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. We're meant to be going the work, we're evolving forward. But I was thinking about this the other day. Yeah. Everything that because I am just, my science is to always just watch these patterns all the time. And even recognizing that, say we go and visit somebody, what do? We talk about what we did and we're catching each other up all the time.
Yep.
Literally we're going, and not that it's all battered, but to notice how that feels. We're always catching everyone up to what we did, rather than like, what if all the conversations were about what we're going to do?
Yeah.
And there's just a whole different quality to like a reactive experience all the time. Yep. And recycling the experience, without an intent, because you do not need to go over it for 20 years in therapy.
No.
And without the intent, so I'm right with you. And that even years ago, I shifted more actively, calling what I do much more about emotional training, because even though it's everything with the self, it feels more true to what it is than just mindset work, which I think every word matters. And if you're only teaching, if you're always this whole thing about mindfulness and mindset, then
Yeah.
everybody just keeps doing it here.
Yeah, and here's my big issue with mindfulness. I think mindfulness is great in a lot of ways, but it falls so short. Like it's almost like it's just about there. The thing about mindfulness is you bring yourself into the present moment. So what I say to people is, okay, bring yourself into sensation, rub your chest, take a deep breath in, feel your breath as it moves in and out through your nostrils. Rub your fingertips together. I get people to sort of cross their fingers and touch their face because the real estate in your brain for your hands and your face is so varied and so wide that you can't ignore this. This will actually bring you into sensation. Make sure your hands are washed, of course. COVID.
Yeah, while you have a mask on out in public.
Yeah. But bringing yourself into sensation is the point. At that point, you're in the moment because you can't think tomorrow. You can't feel tomorrow. You can feel right in the moment that you're in. And as soon as you start focusing on sensation, and I have this little mantra that I use sometimes, it's called sensation without explanation, where I basically just sit in sensation and I watch my brain going, oh, well, how's your breathing today? And even that is words, right? Like, and after a while you get to this point where, the words always come back, but just training yourself to not always depend on words, because we are so mind dependent. And then it's not a very grounded place to be. So when we're going full circle back to people with trauma who have had this trauma in their bodies, so they won't go into their body, because of the trauma that's stored there, they go up into their heads. And I was like this for many, many, many years. So I lived in my head. And then when I took LSD, basically my brain fragmented. So this coping mechanism that I had for years and years and years was taken away from me. So of course it was one of the most horrendous experiences of my life. But I also realized at that point how mind-based that I was and how little I actually spent time in my body. And I think that's, to heal and integrate, we really have to spend, I'm ideally like half time in your mind, half time in your body, and let the two integrate together. But right now we're spending, in therapy, 90%, 95% is talk therapy, and not really feeling any of it. I don't know any medical doctors that would say, oh, you lost your dad when you were 6. Where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah.
No, they're not going to say that, right?
Yeah.
So
no.
It's getting to know your own trigger.
It really reminds me of why, how long has it been going? It's such a different world now. I don't know what time it is. So it's, 10 years ago, at some point of just self-realization, I was like, wait a minute, I don't actually like going to the gym. And I don't have to do anything. And I love dancing and I'm always out dancing. So start taking dance classes. And that also got interrupted when I was little because I needed to become I became an athlete because that was where the attention was.
Right.
So being in the ballroom and learning so much dance, it's like everything that I ever, all the consciousness that I ever came into when I started doing ballroom dancing. And, it's not a bunch of talking. You are learning about how you really are in the world. You want to see how you partner with somebody. Take ballroom dancing as an example. You will see all of your patterns. You'll see everything. And it's just like the greatest trainer to get to realize I am not even in my body, and to do whatever it is that really gets you inside of yourself. Yeah. So you're not always like outside looking in, you're like actually in yourself having the experience. And it's just been incredible. Dancing has changed my entire emotional elevation, my whole life. Yeah.
Well, they've done, a lot of developmental psychologists now are seeing play as therapy,
Absolutely.
And dance is a form of play, where there's no outcome, I guess you could go and dance.
An onion, you keep peeling the onion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my husband says that.
But the last thing I'd add about mindfulness is just adding this piece of just caring for yourself. Because so often when we're children, there's a great saying that I love. It's like when a child is abused, they don't stop loving the parent, they stop loving themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then I think that self-talk starts to sort of take hold. And as we get older, if we don't have that secure attachment in our homes, that narrative starts taking us over. And it's just being able to sort of, where am I not kind to myself? And with you, you just said it, like, it's really not that kind to myself to force myself into the gym. Why not do something that I love
That's so
doing?
nice.
Yeah, why not do something that I love doing, and that connects with your body, and then just being more, and this is a catchphrase these days, of course, but being more compassionate to yourself, because that self-compassion is what you missed when you were younger. You didn't get that mirrored, not you personally. I'm saying a lot
Yeah.
of it. We didn't get
Right,
that
because
compassion.
everybody's struggling in all this trauma and reactivity. And at that point, also, what's so exciting, I want everybody to really get the sense of this, is that I had done a lot of self-connection and self-care by that point, but that was another level. People thought I lost all kinds of weight from dieting and dancing. Actually, it wasn't all that much. It was just the right amount, but it was that I was in alignment with myself.
Totally.
And all of the things that I was doing that were just not my truth, because oh my God, if I don't work out, I won't be skinny or whatever. Now I have to think about eating all the time. I actually have to work on like eating all the time, because I'm living more I live in the things that I love and the purpose that I love, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, and especially true with people with anxiety, so I basically sort of teach, it's not really a stepwise process, but the framework is that. So basically it's ABC. A for awareness. So what are your triggers? Like we were talking about earlier, mine's hypochondriasis. When I start going off thinking that I've got some sort of serious illness, I know that I'm stressed, and I know that I haven't taken any care of myself. B is for body and breath. So when you start seeing your mind go out of control like that, then you go into your body and your breath. Put your hand on your alarm, or put your hand on your chest, focus on your breathing, focus on slowing everything down, focus on just even the sensation of your fingertips together. And then focus on stuff that you like about yourself. I tell people, go to the internet, look up, positive human traits, generosity, intelligence, circle the ones that you have, and then bring that back to yourself. So we're so close with mindfulness, being in the moment and that kind of thing, but we assume that just being in the moment is going to heal our old traumas, and it won't. What'll heal your old traumas is creating a new pathway over the old self-destructive, over the old self-negative, over the old pusher driver that pushes us to be more and more and more, get external validation from the outside, which will never be enough. Like I wrote in the book, I could be like a neuroscientist, movie star, and it would still not be enough, right?
Because the conditioning is right.
But we do need other people. Like a lot, the other catchphrase is, it has to come from the inside. Well, it does, but it has to be modeled for you at the outside as well. Like no one heals alone. So there is this kind of thing that we have to love ourselves and come from ourselves. It really has to be a combination, this sort of ping pong back and forth. Your partner, your parents, your brothers, sisters, the people that are close to you, that can actually show that, and sometimes I get people to write an email to 10 of their friends and just say, can you just give me 2 or 3 things that you like about me?
I do the same. I do the same thing. We are related.
Yeah.
We are related. And Russ, one of the things I really want to know in all of this, I know is really important for everybody to get, is what can people expect from working with you and having you help them with their anxiety?
Well, at this point, I don't do a whole lot of one-on-one stuff. I've spent a lot, the last 15 months, I've pretty much been, spending on my book. So sometimes when you say, I know you're really busy, and it's like, no, I sit in my bed. I have this little cushion that's in my bed, and I sit in there with my laptop, and I just sit there. So for the last 15 months, I've really just been sitting in there and typing. So I haven't really gone out into the world that much. And, COVID is fantastic for writers because, we just stay at home and do that. So it's mostly, when the book comes out, I'm going to start doing more, like workshops, probably online conferences, that kind of stuff too. But getting people into, feeling themselves, going into finding where their old traumas are, finding and giving them the tools that they need so that they, we talked about this earlier, become self-healers, where you can see where you're not. So one of the problems with the medical model is that, you go into a doctor expecting them to be omnipotent and say, here, I will treat you with this and you will become better. Now that just disempowers the crap out of people, right? but it's the only model that we know. Pharmaceuticals are another huge model that medical doctors, and one of the things that I like to say is when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you're trained as a pharmaceutical distributor,
Yeah.
that's the thing you think of. So basically for me, it's just get in touch with your body, get in touch with the trauma in your body. Again, don't start with the worst trauma you've ever had. Get in touch with your trauma, find out where it is in you, and just start kind of breathing into it and feeling it and not saying anything. Sensation without explanation. Just see what kind of messages come from you. And don't take your mind's first offer either. Like your mind will hand you all this, oh, you're not smart enough, you're not thin enough, you're not this enough. It's like, just wait. And just wait and see what the mind, see what it comes up with. You don't have to take its first offering. And just, like the late, great George Carlin had this saying about thoughts. He called them brain droppings.
Oh, I think I remember this from a really long time ago.
It's a great little book,
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten all about it, but
and that's what they are. Like, don't take your thoughts that seriously, but, and sit there with the feeling, and don't take the first thought, the first thing that makes sense in your mind of this feeling, because it may not be it. It may be your ego just keeping it hidden. Your ego doesn't want you to unearth this stuff. So it's
like play hard to get with your thoughts.
Almost. Yeah. I may steal that.
Russ, that is awesome.
I may steal that from you, Tracy.
That's where my mind goes. Like, oh,
I like that a lot.
Do a little dance with these thoughts.
Play hard to get with your thoughts. Yeah, exactly. So make it wait.
Tell everybody the name of this book that they're going to get when it comes out in September.
It's called The Anxiety RX. So, and it's nothing like any anxiety book that I've ever seen before. So it's mostly written it's written a lot from my own experience, my patient's experience, and from, neuroscience. I've got, like pretty heavy stuff. So people with anxiety, they love to know why they overthink everything. And that's why I think they'll love this book, because I explain to them what goes on in their brain, why they're afraid to, leave their mind and go into their body, and ways that they can do that, because that's where you're going to heal. So it's called The Anxiety RX. It was supposed to come out September the 15th, and it may still, but I talked to my editor yesterday, just getting book covers and final edits and all this kind of stuff too. So it may be my father's birthday, October the 5th. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. So yeah, it's been awesome, Trace, talking to you. I'm sure we'll talk again.
Well, I've got one last question before we go.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
This is it. Gets asked in every interview. And
all right.
So this is about, Russ, if this was the last moment of your life where you were like leaving a message for the world, and the thing that you would want them to know, the thing you'd say they carry through their life, they'd say, Russ taught me that. Maybe at some point they just live from that and have that as such an important message to them. What would that message be?
That message would be, when you're in alarm, don't pay any attention to your thinking. Thinking is only going to make it worse. And your ego will sit there in the corner going, you got to think this out. You got to think this out. And your ego is trying to trick you. What you have to do is go into feeling and grounding in yourself. No thought is going to help you, because you don't have you're in survival brain. You don't have access to your prefrontal cortex anyway. So the more you add, this is what I did for years and years and years. And this is why I got caught in this alarm anxiety loop, is that when I would feel this alarm in my system, I would have to figure out a reason for it in my mind. And all I was doing was energizing that alarm anxiety cycle. So when you're in alarm, basically stop thinking and start feeling.
All right, everybody, you heard it. So we both invite you to just take every bit of these emotional tools and all of these perspectives into your life and into your heart. And we just wish you all the best in being able to elevate your own existence. And thanks for being with us. Take care.